His brow scrunched as he studied the two images laid out in front of him. Something didn't add up. He quickly got up and darted over to the filing cabinet, pulling out their medical charts and flipping through the blood work. His eyes moved fast at first, then slower as disbelief crept into his face. Brianna and her twin sister Brittany sat quietly across the room, watching with a mix of curiosity and worry. The doctor's eyes widened the longer he looked. "How is this even possible?" he murmured under his breath. Then he turned to face them. Only now his expression had shifted into something like fear. But before we start, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. It only takes a moment, but it helps us share these incredible stories with more people just like you. Brianna Dean and her twin sister Brittany had always been incredibly close. Most people didn't understand just how in sync they were. It was more than just finishing each other's sentences or dressing alike as kids. It was a connection that ran deep. Still, even with that bond, when it came to relationships, they kept things private until they were sure it was real. For example, Brittany loved to travel and especially loved flying. Brianna, on the other hand, was terrified of planes, which made planning trips tricky, but it also kept their lives full of funny, complicated moments. Brianna met her husband, Josh Sawyers, in the most unexpected place, a twins festival in Twinsburg, Ohio. He was there with his twin brother, Jeremy. As fate would have it, while Brittany made small talk with Jeremy, something clicked between Brianna and Josh. There was an instant pull, like they'd known each other forever. It didn't take long for that spark to grow into something serious. Brianna waited until it felt real. Then she sat down to tell Brittany all about him. But she wasn't prepared for Brittany's reaction. Brittany's face shifted from curiosity to total shock as she listened. She didn't say a word at first, which confused Brianna. Then, almost hesitantly, Brittany confessed her own surprise. She had also been dating Jeremy, Josh's identical twin. And just like Brianna, things were getting serious. The coincidence was wild, almost hard to believe. Soon, the sisters were dreaming of a future where they all lived in the same house, raised families together, and maybe even had a shared wedding day. But before any of that, there was one step they needed to take. It was supposed to be simple, but it turned out to be anything but. They scheduled an appointment with a doctor. Initially, they just wanted to speak to a midwife, nothing more. But under growing pressure from family members, some concerned, some just curious, they agreed to go in for a full checkup. The clinic was cold and quiet, filled with that all-too-familiar smell of antiseptic. And when the doctor walked in with a strange look on his face, both sisters felt their stomachs tighten. This didn't feel like routine. They were both in their late 30s and figured it was smart to get a fertility check done. Everything looked normal, but when they casually mentioned that they were each dating identical twin brothers, the doctor's whole demeanor changed. His concern deepened. Despite confirming they were fertile, he warned them not to start families with Jeremy and Josh. He wouldn't say it outright, but he clearly thought their situation was too unusual. Still, Brittany and Brianna didn't agree. They knew what they wanted, and no doctor's warning was going to change that. They had their dream wedding, side by side, just like they always imagined, and soon after, they bought a home together. A big house with plenty of space for two families, shared dinners, and the kind of closeness that only twin sisters could truly enjoy. For a while, everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. But tucked away in the back of Brianna's mind was that doctor's warning. It lingered like a quiet echo, easy to ignore in the joyful moments, but always there. Not long after settling in, the sisters shared another milestone. They were both pregnant. The news filled the house with excitement and laughter, and their husbands were just as thrilled. But that happiness was quickly followed by something much heavier. Something that Brianna couldn't shake, a feeling that maybe things weren't as perfect as they seemed. At 3 months along, Brittany suffered a miscarriage. The grief hit everyone hard. but it hit Brianna in a different way. She was only 4 weeks behind her sister, and the fear immediately crept in. If they shared the same genes, the same body type, the same everything, could the same heartbreak happen to her too? She tried not to think that way, but just a few weeks later, Brianna lost her baby as well, right around the same point in the pregnancy. It was a devastating blow, but it didn't break them. If anything, it pulled them closer. They leaned on each other, talked through the nights, and held on to hope. Less than 6 months later, they were pregnant again, this time determined to do everything by the book. Regular checkups, cautious routines, and sticking close to medical advice. Still, another warning was waiting for them. At one of their appointments, the doctor looked more serious than usual. Sitting across from them in his white coat, he folded his hands and sighed. "Ladies," he said, "I thought I asked you to speak with me before trying again." Brianna bristled immediately, a hot frustration rising inside her. "No," she said, holding her chin up, "you told our mother that, not us." Her tone was sharp. She gripped her husband's hand tighter, trying to keep calm. The doctor didn't argue. He just reached for a thick folder and opened it on the desk. It was filled with their medical history. He started speaking in clinical terms: genetic testing, prenatal risk, preparation. Brianna barely registered half of it. What right did he have to question their choices? But then he said something that changed the energy in the room. He explained that based on their family's medical history and pending test results from their husbands, there was a real chance that both babies could be affected by the same genetic condition. Not a guarantee, but a risk. "It's your body and your choice," he said gently. "I just wish we'd had time to prepare better. Now we'll have to watch very closely." Twins marrying twins wasn't just a cute story. It came with a unique genetic pattern, one that could complicate things in ways they hadn't expected. Then the doctor glanced at their latest scans. He paused, eyes narrowing. Suddenly, he stood up, grabbed the scans, and darted over to the charts. Brianna and Brittany watched him in silence, their worry growing. He flipped through their blood work, compared notes, and muttered to himself. Something wasn't adding up. Something was very wrong, and he had just found it. The doctor pulled up a chair and sat close to Brianna and Brittany. His face was calm, but his eyes showed something deeper, concern mixed with fascination. He held the test results in his hand, and his voice softened as he explained what they had just discovered. It wasn't anything dangerous, at least not yet, but it was something rare, something not many people ever experience. What worried him most, though, was how little was still known about their situation. There just wasn't a lot of medical data on what happens when identical twins have children with another set of identical twins. Although Brianna and Brittany were carrying babies fathered by different men, the science was surprising. Technically, yes, the children were cousins, but genetically they were more than that. They were full biological siblings, the kind that would usually come from the same parents. The doctor looked from one sister to the other, smiling now as the tension in the room faded. "For an OB," he said with a small chuckle, "this is like hitting the genetic lottery. It's really that rare." And for Brianna and Brittany, it felt like winning the lottery. The relief was huge. 8 months and 2 weeks later, Brianna was the first to go into labor. The delivery had been flagged as high risk, but in the end, both babies were born healthy, pink, and screaming their way into the world. Brianna cried the moment she heard them. She held her newborn close, overwhelmed by joy and grateful that all the worry, warnings, and stress hadn't led to heartbreak again. After the babies were born, the 4 of them, Brianna, Brittany, Josh, and Jeremy, shared a quiet moment together. They all agreed, next time, they'd definitely speak with a doctor first. They were beyond thankful things had gone well, but they didn't want to take chances again. This experience had taught them that even the most amazing situations come with real risks. Still, they couldn't help but be thrilled. Their babies weren't just cousins. They were siblings in a way that few would understand. and growing up under the same roof with 4 loving parents made it all feel even more special. But not everyone shared their joy. Once the story got out, reporters and journalists jumped at the chance to talk to them. At first, the couples agreed it felt fun to share their unusual life. But as the news spread, so did people's opinions, and not all of them were kind. TLC saw how unique their wedding was and decided to turn it into a documentary called Our Twinsane Wedding. The theme was Twice Upon a Time, and even their wedding officiants were identical twins. The whole thing captured the attention of viewers everywhere. It's not every day that one set of identical twins marries another. During interviews, the sisters often get asked the same awkward question, whether the couples have ever gotten each other mixed up. Brianna and Brittany always shut it down quickly. "That's never happened," they say. And Brittany even adds, "It's kind of weird that people even ask." Now they're focusing on family. Their goal is to raise their kids as a tight-knit 4-parent team. But they're also hoping to get pregnant at the same time again, a plan that will take timing, patience, and a little luck. Everything, down to the smallest detail, just seemed to line up perfectly. After the birth of their babies, both couples were completely overjoyed. It truly felt like the kind of story you'd see in a movie or read in a book. But for Brianna, Brittany, Josh, and Jeremy, it was real life. They looked around at the life they had built. 2 sisters, 2 brothers, 2 babies, and it felt like everything had fallen into place exactly the way it was supposed to. It was almost hard to believe how naturally everything had unfolded. From the moment they met at the Twins Festival, it was as if something bigger had been guiding them. Maybe that's why Brittany naturally clicked with Jeremy and Brianna was drawn to Josh. They didn't need to overthink it. There was just an instant sense of familiarity, like each had found the version of their twin in someone else. "If I hadn't lived it myself, I'd think it sounded way too perfect," Brianna once joked. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. The whole thing felt surreal. In an interview, Brittany summed it up beautifully. "The stars had to align. I got to marry the man of my dreams, and at the same time, I looked over and saw my twin marrying her dream man." Not many people get to say that. The odds of something like this happening? Practically 1 in a million. But somehow, for the Dean and Salyers twins, it wasn't just a dream, it was their reality. A shared love story, a shared home, and now a shared journey through parenthood. If this story made you smile, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming true stories like this one. Thanks for watching.